I was 56 wines into the Lexington International Wine Competition when everything went black. Not the wine, my vision. The entire convention center plunged into darkness as if someone had thrown a massive velvet cloth over the building. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm," a voice announced over emergency speakers. "We're experiencing a power outage. Backup generators should activate momentarily." They didn't. That's the problem with these old Lexington buildings. Charming facades, terrible infrastructure. I stood perfectly still behind my judging table, unwilling to risk knocking over any of the precious glasses arranged before me. The murmurs around me grew louder as smartphones illuminated faces in eerie blue light. My hands remained steady, a sommelier's most valuable asset aside from their palate, but my heart raced. I'd been about to score what might have been the competition's dark horse, a surprisingly complex Cabernet from a small vineyard I'd never heard of. "Is everyone all right?" I called out to my fellow judges, hearing confirmations echo back through the darkness. That's when I felt it, a hand reaching for mine in the dark, warm fingers wrapped around my own, squeezing gently. I should have pulled away. Strange hands in the dark aren't typically welcome, but something about the touch felt like an anchor in the chaos. "Sorry," a husky female voice whispered close to my ear, sending unexpected shivers down my spine. "I was trying to find the edge of the table and found you instead." The hand didn't let go. Neither did I. "I'm Margaret," I said, surprising myself with the introduction. "Margaret Edwards." "The Margaret Edwards?" The voice sounded impressed. "The woman who can identify a wine's vintage by scent alone? Your reputation precedes you." I laughed softly. "And you are?" "Someone who's terribly embarrassed about the power situation." Her thumb traced small circles on my hand. "This isn't exactly how I planned for our premiere event to go. You're with the organizing committee?" "Something like that." The darkness stretched between us, oddly intimate. I became hyper-aware of her breathing, the subtle scent of her perfume, notes of jasmine, something citrusy, mingling with the wine aromas still lingering in the air. A flicker of emergency lights briefly illuminated the room, and I caught my first glimpse of her, brunette hair framing a face with striking blue eyes, and a somewhat familiar smile. The lights wavered, threatening to go out again. "I should check on the other judges," she said, but made no move to release my hand. Perhaps it was the wine I'd been tasting all day. Perhaps it was the strange intimacy of connecting with a stranger in darkness. Whatever possessed me, I leaned forward just as the lights flickered again. Our lips met as the room brightened momentarily, soft, unexpected, electric. Though I've described countless wines with elaborate vocabulary, I found myself wordless at the sensation of kissing this stranger. Her lips tasted faintly of the same wine I'd just been judging. The lights went out again, and she pulled away with a soft gasp. "I'm sorry," I whispered, though I wasn't. "I'm not." Her voice smiled in the darkness. "I'm Eva Foster." "Foster?" The name registered immediately. "As in Foster Vineyards?" "The very same." "Family business, 6 generations." Before I could respond, full lighting suddenly flooded the room, harsh and revealing. We both blinked, awkwardly dropping hands as reality reasserted itself. Around us, judges and attendees applauded the return of civilization. Eva stepped back, smoothing her tailored blazer. In the light, I could see her fully, elegant, confident, and undeniably beautiful. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, revealing a delicate gold earring. "Well, Margaret Edwards," she said with a professional smile that barely hinted at our moment in the dark, "I hope this little incident hasn't soured your impression of our event." "On the contrary," I replied, finding my composure. "I think this competition just got considerably more interesting." She handed me her business card. "Perhaps you'd like a personal tour of Foster Vineyards while you're in town? I'd love your professional opinion on our new releases." Our fingers brushed during the exchange, and I knew with certainty I would accept her invitation. Some connections, like the finest wines, deserve to be explored fully, even those that begin in the most unexpected darkness. 3 days after the blackout, I found myself staring at an elegant cream envelope that had been slipped under my hotel room door. Inside was an invitation on heavy cardstock, embossed with a golden grapevine logo. "Foster Vineyards cordially invites you to a private tour and tasting. Transportation provided. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. I ran my fingers over the raised lettering, remembering that unexpected kiss in the darkness. Professional ethics warred with personal curiosity. As a wine judge, I should maintain impartiality. As a woman who hadn't felt that spark with anyone in years, I was already deciding which outfit to wear. The next morning, a sleek black SUV arrived precisely at 10. The driver took me through Lexington's rolling countryside until we crested a hill, revealing acres of meticulously tended vines stretching toward distant mountains. Foster Vineyards was even more impressive than its reputation suggested. At the end of a long gravel drive stood Eva Foster herself, casually elegant in fitted jeans and a crisp white button-down with sleeves rolled to her elbows. The morning sunlight caught her brunette hair, giving it auburn highlights I hadn't noticed during our brief encounter in the darkness. "Margaret," she greeted me with a professional smile, extending her hand as though we were meeting for the first time. "Welcome to Foster Vineyards. I'm Eva Foster." I played along, though confused by her pretense. "A pleasure to meet you properly, Miss Foster. Please, call me Eva." Her handshake lingered just a moment too long. I hope the drive wasn't too tiresome. "Not at all," I replied, studying her face. Was she pretending our encounter never happened? "Your vineyard is beautiful." She led me past the main building toward the fields. 6 generations of Fosters have worked this land. My grandfather planted some of these vines himself. I followed her between rows of trellised vines, listening as she explained their cultivation practices. Her knowledge was impressive, her passion evident. Yet she maintained a careful distance, never acknowledging our previous encounter. "You're probably wondering why I'm acting as if we just met," she finally said, when we reached a viewpoint overlooking the property. The thought had crossed my mind. She turned to face me. "I recognized you instantly at the competition. Your reputation precedes you, Ms. Edwards." Margaret, she repeated, smiling. "I've followed your career for years. When the lights went out and I realized who I was standing next to, well, let's just say I acted impulsively." "So, you knew who I was before the blackout?" "I invited you to judge the competition," she admitted. "When you actually accepted, I was thrilled. Then the power outage happened and She trailed off, color rising to her cheeks. "You kissed me." "You kissed me back," she countered, her blue eyes meeting mine with unexpected intensity. I couldn't argue with that. "And now?" "Now I'm hoping we can start fresh, professionally. I'd value your expertise with our wines." The tour continued through state-of-the-art production facilities until we reached the cellar, where oak barrels lined cool stone walls. The scent of aging wine enveloped us as Eva unlocked a heavy wooden door. "This is our private stock," she explained, leading me into a smaller room lined with dusty bottles. Vintages dating back to my great-grandfather's time. She selected a bottle, handling it reverently. This was my father's favorite, the last vintage he oversaw before he passed. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said, noticing her expression shift. "It's been 3 years." She turned the bottle in her hands. "Since then, I've been fighting to keep this place." "Fighting?" "Kernacor Beverages has been trying to buy us out. They want our land, our name, our heritage, just to mass-produce mediocre wine with our label." Her voice hardened. "Last month, they poisoned our irrigation system. We lost an entire section of young vines." "That's criminal," I said, shocked. "Have you gone to the authorities?" "Can't prove it was them." She carefully replaced the bottle. "My sister would have known what to do. She was always the fighter." "I didn't know you had a sister." "I don't. Not anymore." Eva's eyes clouded. "She died when we were babies. At least that's what I was told." The intimate confession hung between us in the cool cellar air. I watched as she traced her fingers along the bottles, each one a piece of her family's history. In that moment, I sensed both her strength and her loneliness. "Eva," I said softly, "why did you really invite me here?" She turned to me, vulnerability evident in her expression. "Because I need help saving what my family built. And because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the blackout." Her honesty disarmed me completely. As we stood surrounded by bottles holding decades of Foster family history, I realized I was already more invested than any professional should be, both in this vineyard's future and in the woman fighting to preserve it. Late afternoon sunlight streamed through the tasting room windows, casting golden rectangles across the polished oak table where Eva had arranged 6 unmarked bottles. "I have a proposition for you," she said, pouring a splash of ruby liquid into a crystal glass. "A professional one." I raised an eyebrow, swirling the wine she'd just poured. "I'm listening." Foster Vineyards needs to rebuild its reputation in the premium market. Your endorsement could be exactly what we need. She leaned forward slightly. I'd like to hire you as a consulting sommelier for 6 months. The wine hit my palate. Bold blackberry notes with hints of tobacco and vanilla. Impressive depth. This is your 2018 Reserve Cabernet? I asked, though I already knew. I'd recognized it from the competition. Eva nodded. You have an exceptional palate. Flattery won't influence my decision, I said, though I couldn't help smiling. I'm counting on your professional integrity. She poured another sample. Which is precisely why I want you. You're honest, sometimes brutally so. Your Wine Spectator column last year destroyed Villeneuve's overpriced Chardonnay. They deserved it. I sampled the second wine, a subtle, elegant Pinot Noir with surprising complexity. They were charging $200 for glorified vinegar. Eva laughed, the sound warming me more than the wine. So, will you consider my offer? I should have said I needed time to think, that professional entanglements require careful consideration. Instead, I found myself saying yes. Her smile lit up her entire face. Excellent. We can start tomorrow. I'll have the contract ready. We spent the next 2 hours discussing the vineyard's strengths and weaknesses. As the light faded outside the windows, Eva opened a special bottle, a Foster family reserve not available commercially. Only 6 bottles left, she explained. Dad saved them for important occasions. And this qualifies? New beginnings always do. After my third glass, Eva rolled up her sleeves in the warmth of the room. That's when I noticed it, a small crescent-shaped birthmark on her right wrist, partially visible beneath her watchband. My glass froze halfway to my lips. I had the identical mark in the exact same location. What? She asked, catching my stare. I hesitated, then set down my glass and pushed up my own sleeve, extending my wrist beside hers. Eva's eyes widened. That's unusual. Coincidence, I said, though my pulse quickened. Just a strange coincidence. She gently took my hand, turning my wrist to examine the mark more closely. My father used to call mine a moon blessing, said it meant I was marked for something special. Her fingers against my skin sent tingles up my arm. The room felt suddenly too warm, too intimate. I pulled my hand back slowly. It's getting late, I said, though I made no move to leave. Eva nodded but remained seated across from me, her blue eyes reflecting the soft glow of the table lamps. Outside, darkness had fallen completely, wrapping the vineyard in a cocoon of night. You know, she said softly, when the lights went out at the competition, I wasn't scared. Everyone else was panicking, but I felt calm, like something important was about to happen. And then you found my hand. And then I found you, she corrected. The air between us crackled with unspoken tension. I knew I should stand up, thank her for the tasting, and maintain professional boundaries. Instead, I reached for the wine bottle and poured us each another glass. To new partnerships, I said, raising my glass. Is that what this is? Eva asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The wine had loosened my inhibitions just enough. What do you want it to be? Her eyes never left mine as she set down her glass. I think you know. Tell me anyway. I haven't been able to stop thinking about that moment in the dark, she admitted. About you. That would complicate our professional arrangement. Life is complicated. She moved around the table, coming to stand beside my chair. Margaret, I don't usually do this. I looked up at her, at the way the soft light caught the angles of her face. Do what? This, she whispered, and leaned down. Her kiss tasted of wine and desire, tentative at first, then deepening as I responded. My hands found her waist, pulling her closer until she was straddling my lap in the tasting room chair, her fingers tangled in my hair. We shouldn't, I murmured against her mouth, even as I pulled her closer. Probably not, she agreed, brushing her lips along my jaw. Do you want to stop? My answer was to capture her mouth again, years of careful professional distance evaporating in the heat between us. Later I would blame the wine, the intimate setting, the strange connection we seemed to share. But in that moment, with barrel-aged Cabernet on our tongues and matching crescent moons on our wrists, nothing had ever felt more right than kissing Eva Foster among the ghosts of her family's legacy. Miss Edwards, a moment of your time? The reporter from the Lexington Herald waved enthusiastically as I exited the winery's main building. 2 weeks into my consulting position at Foster Vineyards, and the local press had already caught wind of my presence. "Margaret, you don't have to talk to him," Eva said quietly beside me. "It's fine," I assured her. "Good publicity, remember?" The eager young man jogged over, notebook in hand. "Ms. Edwards, is it true that you've taken a position at Foster Vineyards, the Margaret Edwards, abandoning impartiality for a single producer?" I smiled professionally. "I'm consulting temporarily on their premium line rebrand. Any conflicts of interest have been properly disclosed to relevant publications." "And what drew you to Foster Vineyards specifically?" He glanced between Eva and me with curious eyes. "The untapped potential," I replied honestly. "Eva Foster is doing revolutionary work with heritage varieties that deserves recognition." 20 minutes and several questions later, the reporter finally seemed satisfied. "One last thing, mind if I get a photo of you two by the vineyards?" Eva hesitated but nodded. We stood somewhat awkwardly side by side until the reporter directed us to move closer together. Eva's arm slipped around my waist, and warmth spread through me at the contact. "Perfect," the young man said, snapping several photos. "This will run in Sunday's edition. Thanks for your time." As he walked away, Eva's arm lingered around me a moment longer than necessary. Since our kiss in the tasting room, we'd maintained a careful professional distance during working hours, though the tension between us remained palpable. "That wasn't so bad," I offered. "Let's hope so," Eva replied, her expression troubled. "Kernicorp has friends at the paper. I wouldn't put it past them to twist this somehow." That evening, we worked late cataloging library vintages in the Cellar. Around midnight, Eva's phone rang. "Hello?" she answered, then frowned. "Slow down, Martha." "What picture?" I watched as her expression shifted from confusion to concern. "When was this taken?" 1985. "Are you certain?" She listened intently. Yes, I understand. "Can you bring it tomorrow?" "Thank you." Eva hung up, her face pale in the cellar's dim light. "What's wrong?" I asked. "That was Martha Daniels," Eva explained. "She was our family's housekeeper when I was born. She says she saw your picture in the early edition of Sunday's paper." Eva swallowed hard. "She says you look exactly like me as a baby." I laughed nervously. "We do have similar coloring, but—" "Martha is coming tomorrow with a photograph she says my father made her swear never to show me." Eva's blue eyes locked with mine, a photograph of twins. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed in my hotel bed, plagued by questions. The matching birthmarks, our similar features despite different colorings, the strange connection I'd felt with Eva from the start. Could it possibly mean what it seemed to suggest? The next morning, I arrived at the vineyard to find Eva pacing the office. An elderly woman sat in an armchair, clutching a manila envelope. "Margaret," Eva said, her voice tight. "This is Martha Daniels." The old woman studied me with watery eyes. "Good Lord," she whispered, "it's like seeing a ghost." "Martha worked for my family for 40 years, Eva explained. "She helped deliver me." "Delivered both of you," Martha corrected. "On this very property, during the worst storm of 1985. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Both?" Martha nodded, opening the envelope with trembling fingers. "Your mother had complications, no time to get to the hospital. Your father and I delivered you two right here." She withdrew a faded Polaroid. Eva took it first, her face draining of color before passing it to me. The photo showed a tired but smiling woman holding two newborn infants, each with a small crescent birthmark visible on their tiny wrists. "Your parents were in terrible debt," Martha continued. "The vineyard was failing, medical bills mounting, when a wealthy couple from Connecticut offered to adopt one of you and pay enough to save the vineyard." Her voice cracked. "Your father made the hardest choice of his life." "Me," I whispered. "He gave me away." "He made the family that took you swear never to tell you about your twin," Martha said gently. "He believed a clean break was kinder." Eva slumped into a chair, her eyes never leaving my face. "All these years, I thought my sister died. And I grew up an only child," I added, my voice hollow. We stared at each other across the room, strangers and yet somehow the most familiar people in each other's lives. The attraction, the connection, the strange sense of recognition, it all made terrible sense now. "I need to know for sure," Eva said finally. "There's a lab in town that does DNA testing. We could have results in a week. I nodded, still clutching the photograph. We should do it today. Martha watched us with sad eyes. Your father never forgave himself, she told Eva. On his deathbed, he made me promise that if his girls ever found each other, I'd tell you both he was sorry. The DNA test results arrived via email exactly 1 week after we'd swabbed our cheeks at the Lexington Medical Laboratory. I was alone in my hotel room staring at the unopened message in my inbox. My phone rang. Eva. Did you get it? She asked without preamble. Yes, I replied. Haven't opened it yet. Me neither. Her voice sounded small, uncertain. Should we do it together, in person? An hour later, we sat side by side on the porch swing at Eva's cottage on the vineyard property, her laptop balanced between us. Neither of us reached to click the attachment. Whatever this says, Eva began, then faltered. It changes things, I finished for her. The past week had been excruciating. We'd maintained a strictly professional relationship, both retreating into work to avoid confronting the impossible situation. Our consulting sessions had been formal, tense affairs, neither of us mentioning the kiss we'd shared or the DNA test looming over us. Just open it, I said finally. Eva clicked. The medical letterhead appeared, followed by clinical language and charts. But the conclusion stood out in bold text, 99.9% probability of identical twin match. Even expecting it, seeing the scientific confirmation felt like a physical blow. Eva closed the laptop and set it aside. We sat in silence, the porch swing creaking gently. I always felt something was missing, Eva said finally, her voice breaking the stillness. All my life. Like a phantom limb. I nodded, understanding perfectly. I used to dream about a girl with my face. I thought it was normal. Eva turned to look at me, her eyes, my eyes, brimming with tears. What do we do now? I had no answer. The attraction between us, the feelings that had been developing, now twisted into something complicated and impossible. I should leave, I said finally. Go back to San Francisco, forget this consulting job. Is that what you want? Eva asked. Of course not. But what choice do we have? She didn't respond. We sat there as darkness fell, two identical souls in different bodies, separated by cruel circumstance and reunited by chance, now trapped in an impossible situation. The next morning, I packed my suitcase. I left a detailed report on Eva's premium wines on the hotel desk, along with a note declining further payment for my consulting work. Professional to the end. I was checking out when my phone chimed with a text from Eva. Please don't go. Not like this. I ignored it. Another came through. At least say goodbye properly. By the time I reached the rental car, she had called 3 times. I turned off my phone and drove away from Lexington, away from Foster Vineyards, away from the sister I never knew I had, and the woman I couldn't allow myself to love. I made it 50 miles before pulling over at a roadside diner, overwhelmed by what felt like physical pain at the separation. I turned my phone back on to find 12 missed calls and a text, I won't let you disappear again, not after just finding you. Rain started to fall as I sat there, tapping my fingers on the steering wheel. The logical part of me knew leaving was the right decision. The rest of me felt like I was tearing myself in half. 3 hours later, I was still sitting in the diner parking lot when the familiar black SUV pulled up beside me. Eva stepped out into the pouring rain, not bothering with an umbrella. She yanked open my car door. Did you really think you could just leave? Rain dripped from her hair onto my sleeve. It's the only sensible option, I said. Damn sense, she snapped. I just found my sister after 33 years. You think I'm going to let you walk away because things got complicated? Complicated? I laughed bitterly. Eva, we kissed. We were heading toward... I couldn't finish the sentence. I know, she said, softer now. But that doesn't mean we can't figure this out. We're adults. We share DNA, a birthmark, and apparently terrible taste in hiding spots. She gestured to the rundown diner. The first place I checked. How did you know I'd be here? Because it's where I would have stopped, she answered simply. The rain fell harder, soaking her completely as she stood beside my car. Lightning flashed in the distance, followed by a rumble of thunder. Get in before you drown, I sighed. She circled to the passenger side and slid in, bringing the scent of rain and something uniquely Eva, something that was perhaps uniquely us. We need to talk about what happened in the tasting room, she said quietly. No, we don't, I insisted. We need to forget it. Eva turned to face me fully. I can't. And I don't think you can either. The parking lot lights cast shadows across her face, my face, yet not, as another flash of lightning illuminated the car interior. In that brief electric moment, something shifted between us. Margaret, she whispered, reaching across to brush rain-damp hair from my face. I don't know what we are to each other now, but I know I can't lose you again. Her fingers lingered on my cheek, and despite every logical protest screaming in my mind, I leaned into her touch. The contact ignited something primal and undeniable between us, biology be damned. When our lips met this time, it was with full knowledge of who we were to each other, and with the desperate certainty that whatever this was between us transcended conventional definitions. We returned to the vineyard that evening, a fragile peace established between us. We had agreed to take time to process our newfound relationship as sisters, while setting boundaries on the other feelings neither of us could fully deny. Home sweet home, Eva said as we pulled up to the main house, her attempt at lightness falling flat. I nodded, exhausted from the emotional whiplash of the day. I'll check into a different hotel tomorrow. Don't be ridiculous, she countered. The cottage has a guest room. You'll stay there while we figure this out. Before I could respond, Eva's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, frowning. It's my marketing director, she said, answering. Hello? What? When? Her expression darkened as she listened. Send me the link immediately. She hung up, her hands trembling slightly. What is it? I asked. Apparently we're front-page news. She pulled up her email and clicked a forwarded link. The headline screamed across her screen. Wine World Scandal, renowned sommelier and vineyard heiress revealed as secret twins. Beneath it was the photo from the newspaper, alongside a grainy shot of us embracing in the diner parking lot, clearly taken hours ago. How did they... I began. Kernacorp, Eva cut me off, her voice hard. They've been watching me. This is exactly the scandal they need to devalue our brand. The article was brutal, questioning whether I'd known about our relationship when I agreed to consult for Foster Vineyards, implying insider favoritism, and even hinting at an inappropriate relationship based on the parking lot photo. This could ruin your reputation, Eva said, looking stricken. I laughed bitterly. Yours too. The next morning brought a barrage of calls from wine industry colleagues, publications I'd written for, and competitors of Foster Vineyards. My voicemail filled with interview requests from tabloid shows and psychological journals alike, all wanting the inside scoop on the wine twins. By noon, I'd received an email from Wine Spectator temporarily suspending my column pending an ethics review. Eva wasn't faring any better. 3 retailers called to cancel orders, citing concerns about brand contamination, and a scheduled tour group canceled their reservation. This is exactly what Kernacorp wanted, Eva fumed as we sat at her kitchen table, both our phones buzzing incessantly with notifications. Create a scandal. Damage our reputation. Drive down our value. Then swoop in with a lowball offer. We need to respond, I said. Get ahead of the narrative. How? Eva threw her hands up. What exactly do we say? Yes, we're long-lost twins who were developing feelings for each other before we knew the truth? That won't exactly help matters. I winced at her bluntness, but she wasn't wrong. The situation was unsalvageable by conventional means. A call from Eva's lawyer confirmed our worst fears. The publicity was causing investors to pull out of a planned expansion of Foster Vineyards' distribution network. We have 2 choices, Eva said after hanging up. Separate completely and hope the story dies down, or face this head-on. What does facing it head-on look like? I asked. A press conference. Complete transparency about our discovery. Emphasize the professional nature of our current relationship. And the other aspects? I asked quietly. Eva met my eyes. We acknowledge the confusion and hurt, then make it clear we're moving forward as sisters only. Sisters only. The words hung between us, both a boundary and a loss. The press conference was scheduled for the following afternoon in the vineyard's main tasting room. Television cameras, print journalists, and wine industry representatives packed the space as Eva and I took our places at a table before them. Eva spoke first, her voice steady as she recounted the accidental discovery of our relationship, emphasized the legitimate professional reasons for my consulting work, and outlined the steps we were taking to ensure transparency going forward. I followed with a statement about recusing myself from any formal reviews of Foster Vineyards products and my commitment to ethical standards in wine evaluation. Then came questions, most professional, some invasive, and a few downright cruel. "Was there ever any romantic involvement between you two?" asked a reporter from a tabloid magazine, his smile predatory. Ava hesitated, glancing at me. In that moment, something broke loose inside me, a certainty that transcended conventional wisdom. I reached for Eva's hand on the table, interlacing our fingers. A collective gasp rippled through the room. "Our relationship is complicated," I said directly into the microphones. "And no one, not you, not the wine industry, not society, gets to dictate how we navigate it." Ava's stunned expression softened into something like relief as she leaned toward her microphone. "We found each other against impossible odds," she added. "We're not letting anyone tear us apart again." Then, in full view of the cameras, Eva turned to me, cupped my face in her hands, and kissed me, briefly but unmistakably on the lips. The room erupted into chaos as flashbulbs exploded and questions were shouted. "I'm not hiding anymore," she whispered against my lips. "Not from anything." The fallout from the press conference was swift and polarizing. Wine Spectator formally terminated my column. 3 more retailers pulled Foster Vineyards wines from their shelves. My inbox overflowed with messages ranging from support to vitriol. Yet amid the chaos, vineyard visits increased threefold. Apparently, scandal drove tourism. "They come hoping to see the controversial twins," Eva remarked dryly one morning, as we watched another tour bus pull into the parking area. "At least they're buying wine." A week after our public declaration, we were preparing for an important industry showcase in Charlotte. The annual Carolina Wine Exhibition represented our best chance to rehabilitate Foster Vineyards' reputation among distributors and retailers. "We'll present the new Reserve Pinot," Eva said as we tasted through barrel samples in the cellar. "It's our strongest offering." I nodded in agreement, making notes on the complex flavors developing in the young wine. "The blackberry notes are remarkable. This could win awards." Our professional rhythm had developed into something beautiful, her vintner's knowledge complementing my tasting expertise perfectly. We'd established careful boundaries around our personal relationship, sleeping in separate rooms at the cottage and focusing on rebuilding both our careers. The night before the exhibition, Ava insisted on a final tasting of the showcase wines. We were midway through when her production manager burst into the tasting room, his face pale. "Eva, something's wrong with the Reserve Pinot." We followed him to the barrel room where he presented a sample from the exhibition bottles. The moment the wine hit my palate, I knew something was terribly wrong. The once vibrant flavor profile had flattened entirely, with a distinct chemical undertone. "This is ruined," I confirmed, spitting the liquid into a bucket. "All of it?" "Every bottle we prepared for the showcase," he confirmed. "The original barrels are untouched, but those won't be ready for months." Ava's face hardened. This wasn't an accident. Someone contaminated our showcase wine. We spent hours testing bottles, confirming that all 24 destined for the exhibition had been tampered with. Without our flagship wine, our showcase presence would be crippled. "It had to be an inside job," Eva said, pacing the barrel room. Only staff knew which bottles were earmarked for Charlotte. I thought back over the past few weeks, who had access, who had motive. Suddenly, a connection sparked in my mind. "Celia," I said, "your assistant winemaker." Eva stopped pacing. "What about her?" "She dated you before, didn't she?" The pieces fell into place as I spoke. "She has access to everything, knows the security codes, and the way she looks at me when she thinks no one's watching." "Pure hatred," Eva finished, understanding dawning. "But sabotaging our wine? That seems extreme, even for jealousy." I shook my head. "It's not just jealousy. I saw her having lunch with a Kernacorp executive last week at that cafe in town. I didn't think anything of it then, but..." Ava's phone rang before she could respond. She answered, listened briefly, then her expression darkened further. "Security caught Celia accessing the files in my office," she reported after hanging up. "She was downloading financial documents." "Corporate espionage?" I suggested. "And sabotage," Eva confirmed. "A perfect combination to drive down our value before the Kernacorp board meeting next week." We spent the night in crisis mode. While security escorted Celia off the property and Eva filed police reports, I worked frantically to identify any untampered wines we could substitute for the showcase. By dawn, we had cobbled together a last-minute selection, a vertical tasting of library Cabernets, and a promising but untested experimental blend Eva had been working on. "It's risky," she admitted as we loaded the alternate wines into the SUV. "The experimental blend isn't what I'd consider finished." I squeezed her hand. "Trust me, there's something special in that blend." The exhibition hall buzzed with activity as we set up our modest booth. I could feel eyes on us. The infamous twins, now showing up with a last-minute change to their featured wines. The first hour brought few visitors, most industry professionals giving our table a wide berth. Then, slowly, curious tasters approached. As they sampled the experimental blend, a unique fusion of traditional Burgundian techniques with California innovation, something shifted. "This is extraordinary," declared a prominent distributor, studying the ruby liquid in his glass. "What do you call it?" Eva glanced at me, a smile playing at her lips. "Twin Flame." By closing, we had secured commitments from 5 new distributors and received an invitation to submit Twin Flame for Wine Enthusiasts Innovation Award. As we packed up, Eva pulled me into a fierce hug. "We did it." "We did," I agreed, feeling the perfect alignment of our talents, her creation, my palate, our shared vision. "Sabotage backfired," Eva murmured into my hair. "They tried to break us, but they only made us stronger." "We should formalize our partnership," Eva said one morning, 3 months after the exhibition triumph. We sat on her cottage porch, watching the sun rise over rows of vines heavy with ripening fruit. I lowered my coffee mug. "What are you proposing exactly?" "A business merger, your internationally acclaimed palate with my historic vineyard." She slid a folder across the table. I had my lawyers draw up the papers. "Edwards Foster Vineyards, equal partners." The proposal took my breath away. After decades building my reputation as an independent sommelier, the idea of putting down roots, literally, was both terrifying and tempting. "This is a big step," I said, scanning the documents. Eva nodded. "Take your time. It's just, after everything we've been through, I can't imagine doing this without you now." Kernacorp had withdrawn their takeover attempt following Celia's arrest for corporate espionage. Twin Flame had won Best Innovative Blend at the National Wine Awards, and advance orders were pouring in. We were on the cusp of something extraordinary. "I'll think about it," I promised, though in my heart I already knew my answer. Later that day, I found Eva in the vineyard's small library, surrounded by dusty journals and photo albums. "What's all this?" I asked. "Martha dropped these off. My father's personal journals." Eva looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "I've been reading about the night we were born." I settled beside her on the leather couch as she passed me an open journal. The handwriting was tight and precise, the ink faded with age. "September 15th, 1985. My daughters came into this world tonight, identical in every way except their cries. Baby A announces herself boldly. Baby B has a questioning sound, as if asking permission to exist. How can I possibly choose between them? Yet the Edwardses offer enough money to save everything my family has built. They cannot have children of their own. They promise to give one of my girls a life of privilege I cannot provide. Is it selfish to keep both when I can barely afford one? Elizabeth says we must keep them together, but the bank gives us no choice. Forgive me for what I must do tomorrow." Tears blurred my vision as I read his agonized words. He didn't want to give me up. "He thought about you every day," Eva said softly. "Listen to this entry from your 10th birthday. Somewhere my other daughter turns 10 today. Does she blow out candles on a cake? Does she know she is loved, even by those who cannot hold her?" We spent hours reading through the journals, discovering our father's annual ritual of lighting a candle on my birthday, and his dream that someday his daughters would find each other. "He believed we would," Eva whispered, turning to the final entry, written days before his death. "I sense Margaret will find her way home someday. The vines know their own." As evening fell, we moved to the vineyard, walking between rows planted by our grandfather. Harvest was approaching, the air heavy with the scent of ripening fruit. "I feel closest to him here," Eva said, trailing her fingers along the leaves. "I used to catch him talking to the vines like old friends." "What did he say to them?" I asked. "That they were witnesses to history, that they would outlive us all." She stopped, turning to face me. "He would be happy we found each other." The setting sun cast golden light across the vineyard, illuminating Eva's face, so like mine but uniquely hers. For weeks we had carefully navigated the complexity of our relationship, focusing on our professional partnership while acknowledging the deeper connection between us. "I've made my decision about the business proposal," I said. Ava's expression remained carefully neutral. "And? I'm in. Partners." Her smile was radiant. "There's no one I'd rather build this legacy with." We continued walking as darkness fell, eventually finding ourselves in a secluded clearing among the oldest vines on the property. Above us, stars emerged in the clear autumn sky, the same stars that had witnessed our birth 33 years earlier. "Do you believe in fate?" Eva asked suddenly, her voice soft in the darkness. "I never used to," I admitted. "Now I'm not so sure." She stepped closer, her face illuminated by moonlight. "All those years we were apart, something was missing. Now everything makes sense." The night air hummed with electricity between us, a current of connection that transcended conventional understanding. When Eva reached for my hand, her touch sparked something primal and undeniable. "We get to define what we are to each other," she whispered, her fingers intertwining with mine. "No one else." Surrounded by ancient vines under a canopy of stars, we surrendered to the unique gravity between us. Her lips found mine with certainty and hunger. As we sank to the ground among the vines our family had tended for generations, we chose to write our own story, one that defied easy categorization but felt unquestionably right. 1 year to the day after the infamous power outage that first brought us together, Edwards Foster Vineyards hosted its inaugural harvest celebration. The vineyard was transformed with string lights crisscrossing between rows of vines heavy with fruit. Industry leaders, local dignitaries, and wine enthusiasts filled the property, all eager to taste the now legendary twin flame that had taken the wine world by storm. "I still can't believe this is real," I murmured to Eva as we greeted guests in matching cream linen suits, her hair now streaked with subtle blonde highlights that complemented my natural color. "Which part?" she asked with a playful smile. "The vineyard's turnaround, our unexpected sisterhood, or the fact that Wine Spectator is begging you to write for them again?" "All of it," I admitted, accepting 2 glasses of our signature blend from a passing server. "A year ago I was judging other people's wines in sterile conference rooms. Now I'm making them." Eva clinked her glass against mine. "To unlikely journeys." The celebration was in full swing when our attorney approached, tablet in hand. "Everything's ready for the ceremony," he informed us. "Judge Matthews arrived a few minutes ago." Eva squeezed my hand. "Are you ready?" I nodded, suddenly nervous. "Absolutely." We made our way to the stone patio where guests had begun to gather. Martha Daniels sat in the front row, her eyes already glistening with tears. Beside her was a framed photograph of our parents on their wedding day. Judge Matthews, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes, stood waiting beneath an arch woven with grapevines and white roses. As Eva and I took our places before her, a hush fell over the crowd. "Friends and colleagues," the judge began. "We gather to witness not only a commitment between these 2 women, but the formal union of 2 legacies into one." She outlined the unusual journey that had brought us together, strangers who became colleagues, then sisters, then something society had no adequate name for. The legal ceremony we'd crafted was unique, part business merger, part commitment ceremony, entirely our own definition of family. "The documents you're signing today," Judge Matthews explained, "legally unite Edwards Sommelier Services and Foster Vineyards into a single entity, with both parties sharing equal ownership, responsibility, and inheritance rights." As we signed the papers before witnesses, I caught sight of our reflections in the polished surface of a serving tray. 2 faces, similar yet distinct, now legally bound in a relationship that defied conventional categories. "By the power vested in me," Judge Matthews concluded, "I now pronounce you legal partners in business and in life. Edwards Foster Vineyards is officially established." The crowd erupted in applause as Eva pulled me into an embrace that was both sisterly and something more, a connection that existed in the space between defined relationships. Later, as the celebration continued around us, Eva led me away from the crowds to the hilltop, where we'd first toured the vineyard together. "I have something for you," she said, withdrawing a small wooden box from her pocket. Inside lay an antique silver pendant in the shape of a crescent moon, a match to one she now wore around her neck. "These belong to our grandparents," she explained as she fastened the chain around my neck. "Grandma gave them to Dad when they married. saying they symbolized two halves finding wholeness together. The pendant rested against my skin, cool at first, then warming. It's perfect. As darkness fell completely, we stood at the highest point of our vineyard beneath the same stars that had witnessed both our separation and reunion. I never believed in soulmates, I said softly. Then I found mine in the most unexpected place. Ava's fingers interlaced with mine, our matching crescent birthmarks aligned. Some connections can't be explained, only honored. Below us, the celebration continued, lights twinkling among vines heavy with fruit ready for harvest. Guests raised glasses of twin flame in toasts, unaware that the true miracle wasn't in the exquisite wine, but in the journey of two souls finding their way back to each other against impossible odds. In the darkness of that power outage, Ava whispered, "I found my light." As our lips met beneath the vast Kentucky sky, I knew with absolute certainty that some stories aren't meant to be understood, only lived. Ours would continue to unfold in ways neither science nor society could categorize, written in shared DNA, parallel hearts, and vintage after vintage of wine born from the land that had always been meant to bring us home to each other.